in in Portugal in November, so then people can finally meet in person.
Nice.
Okay.
Is that in sync with the
think-
Lisbon event? The what is it? ETH? Maybe it's ETH Lisbon or something, maybe?
Yeah, ETH Lisbon, then there's the Solana Breakpoint. I think there was the Near conference. Sorry, it's just my alarm clock going off. I have to stop it. Just to make sure. I was trying to make sure that I will not miss our meeting. And I don't know where I left the alarm clock.
That's so funny. She sounds like me. I set alarms all over to make sure I'm on time for stuff.
Okay, so we can officially get started. So welcome everyone today to our workshop session on Friday in the 4th week of Unit Masters. And this week, after we spoke about Internet of Value and decentralization, we had a 2nd week about the blockchain ecosystem, learning about who are the different actors in the ecosystem. And the 3rd week was about consensus mechanisms and how that works on technological level and also on DAO level, like consensus between humans. Had a workshop about that last week. And this week was about NFT, DeFi, the metaverse, and identities. And yesterday we already spoke about how the metaverse and identities, how identities are deployed in the metaverse from an artist and from a creator's perspective. And today we hear from a more technological perspective. So we have with us our wonderful, wonderful speaker from Unstoppable Domains. I want to introduce Sandy. Sandy Carter is the Senior Vice President and Channel Chief at Unstoppable Domains. In this role, she and her team are responsible for driving new partnerships and integrations for Web3. And they do like fantastic. Unstoppable Domains just closed a Series A, 65 million. And Sandy's mission is to onboard the world onto the decentralized web by building blockchains-based identity platforms. The Unstoppable domain names, which we will hear about today, are minted as NFTs that allow users to replace hundreds of archaic cryptocurrency addresses with a single human-readable name that simplifies crypto transfers. And the domains can also be hosted on decentralized websites, act as chat IDs, and more, but we will hear about that in a little bit. And NFTs domains are used and owned and controlled by the user. They permanent. They don't have renewal fees like some of the other models we know in the market. So thank you very much, Sandy, for being here. Sandy is also being very well known in the Web3 market for being a champion of zero exclusivity or full inclusiveness in Web3. She's put a lot of energy and dedication to build gender parity for Web3 with some of her initiatives, and feel very grateful that you are here to join us, Sandy. Please, the stage is all yours.
Well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate that phenomenal introduction. Yep, really appreciate it. And I'm just so thrilled to be here and to hear more about your community too. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and put up some slides so that we can walk through it. And yep, just let me know, how do you typically do? Do you go through the whole presentation and then do questions? Is that how you want to go?
Yes, please, if that's possible. And guys, everyone, please note down your key takeaways as every session, like so that you can fill that in the survey later. And also at the end of the session, you can write your questions into the chat so we can read them out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to just touch on blockchain because I think blockchain is such an important element of the digital identity. I won't spend too much time because I know you guys are already super smart on it. And then I'll go into digital identity. I would love it for you guys to tweet out some of these slides as we go along. So down here at the bottom is my Twitter handle as well. And then of course, Unstoppable is just at Unstoppable Domains that you can also tweet some of this for as well. Yep, gave you a little bit of information around what Unstoppable is, but I just wanted to also let you know that we do have a number of different Web3 domains that we're going to talk about today that are available. Everybody already has asked, what's the most popular one? .crypto is the most popular TLD or top level domain today, but .nft is quickly catching up. .x is where most of our celebrities go after. So they want that .x. So we do have a higher price a lot of the times for .x because everybody wants to copy the celebrities as well. I will let you know that 2.5 million of these domains are out in the wild and being used today. And we'll talk about the importance of partners and that ecosystem also mentioned earlier. And we do mint everything on Polygon, but we do support over 10 different EVM chains as well. So I'm going to start out with a little story. I have 2 daughters. I'm very proud of my 2 daughters. And we have a tradition. I don't know if you guys have traditions in your family, but our tradition is we make pancakes every Sunday, or I guess I should say I make pancakes every Sunday. So we were doing this for a while and my daughters came to me with this picture and they said, "Mom, can you make us this pancake?" And of course I looked at it and I said, "Yes, of course I can make that pancake." So I did. You're probably laughing right now because it's not as perfect as the pancake on the left, but I use this to illustrate a couple of points. One, this was only my MVP, so it wasn't my final product. And as we know, MVPs sometimes are a little bit rough on that user interface. Secondly, it was usable. My daughters, much to my chagrin, did post this all over Instagram because they loved it. And it really shows you how innovation takes place. And the reason I tell you this is that if you think about Web3 and the metaverse and everything that you guys are learning today, we're much more like this pancake on the right. We need to have a lot more user interface. We're just getting started. I like to say we're in the dial-up phase of where we're going, but we will get to what looks like the pancake on the left as we proceed along. Now, I'm a very visual learner. So for me, having everything laid out in the right way, understandable, is really important. So I worked on this slide with Constellation, Ray Wang, who's the CEO, to kind of visualize how everything looks and fits together. Now, it sounds like you guys have already been going through a lot of this, but I just wanted to kind of talk about how I see the world because I think it's important as we get into digital identity. So I believe everything starts with the blockchain. It's how I went down the rabbit hole in Web3. I learned about the blockchain, what its value was, why it's so secure, and why it is the backbone of Web3 and the metaverse. And many people will say, well, is it blockchain or Web3? And that's really not the right question because Web3 sits on top of the blockchain. It's blockchain and Web3. Web3 brings into the equation that decentralized access, as well as that digital identity that we're going to spend our time on today. Now, we just heard, I know that you guys spent some time in the metaverse yesterday. I love the metaverse. We will touch on it and how digital identity relates, and metaverse sits on top of Web3. Now, I know you may be thinking, aren't there some Web2 metaverses? There absolutely are. However, the biggest and fastest growing metaverses today sit on top of Web3, and they utilize new technology, virtual reality and augmented reality, as well as AI to really grow that apart. And then because you saw my pancake example, the interface, if I was a new startup, I would go after interface, making things easier, because that's really where we lack a lot of things today. Now you can see in the pink box, I am a big pink fan. You can see the DAO up there. I have the DAO up there encompassing everything because a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, is really setting the stage for governance and how governance will work in this new Web3 metaverse world. I think it's important to only grow over time. And it does use a lot of the same technologies. It's based on the blockchain, typically Web3, and also leverages artificial intelligence. The biggest and the best DAOs do. On the two sides for me are the two-sided marketplace, which I think is also really important in the space that we're talking about. So on the left-hand side, you see this creator economy that's really spun up by this tech in the center. Very different, I think, than Web 2. Web 2 did have social media influencers, but not artists and musicians and everything else that Web3 has been opening up. So this creator economy is on the left-hand side, and on the right are all of these digital networks that are then consuming. And I think that's what makes this so exciting. You got this, I'm a tech geek girl, so you have all this great tech in the middle, using a lot of tech that we've all known and loved: IoT, AI, AR, VR, blockchain. But you've got the two-sided marketplace also really helping to drive this along as well. So I am hoping that this really, kind of helps frame it. And I did just want to take a couple of minutes. Again, I know you guys have really gone through blockchain, but for me, it is the backbone of everything we're going to talk about today. So as we talk about digital identity, it is based on the chain. And one of the reasons I really love it is it's really a simple concept, right? Information is literally in a chain of blocks. And what it does for all of us is it provides 5 critical elements. First, it provides transparency. When you want it, not everything is transparent on the chain, but when you want it, it is transparent. It is public data. It is user owned, and user ownership is so important today. We were just on a Twitter space, and a gentleman said that today, a lot of us have delegated ownership. Think about it. We used to own a DVD. We used to own music. Now we do a lot of streaming. We're really delegating that ownership to someone else. We log into Google, we log into Instagram. We're really delegating the ownership of our data to someone else. The blockchain says that ownership should be ours. And so that user ownership is really important here. It's also interoperable, so you have the ability to move in between applications, also critical. When I started going down the rabbit hole and learned about blockchain, it was really in a Web 2 context with financial services companies and supply chain. It's also immutable. So, I grew up telling my daughters, be careful what you post on Facebook, on Instagram. I think now I've changed it to be careful what you put on the blockchain. And then it's programmable. So for me, these are all the core elements. And I wanted to talk to you about it because it is critical that we all know that what we're going to talk about, everything we're talking about today, is based on the blockchain. And we've recently just hit a big milestone. We told you we have 2.5 million domains. We have just reached a milestone of 1 million minted on the Polygon chain. Now, why is that important? Polygon is a layer 2 chain. It also protects the environment and the climate. And so we're really proud that more and more and more of our domains will be minted on Polygon, on that blockchain, as well as we move forward. Okay, so now we're going to move up to Web3, which is, I know what you guys are wanting to hear about, but I wanted to do that basis and that background because as you're learning, I found, as I teach classes at Carnegie Mellon as an adjunct professor, if you don't have the context, it's really hard to grasp sometimes the core elements of what you're learning. So we're now going to go up one layer in my layer cake. You can see I like food, right? Pancakes, now I layer cake. And on the Web3 side, I'm not going to talk about decentralized access because you had that lecture already, but I'm going to really work on that digital identity piece of Web3. So first, let's talk about digital identity in the Web2 world. So if you think about all the companies that really grew up in the Web2 world, first of all, I'll tell you, one of the interesting things is most of them were born in a bear market. So I know many of us are like, oh, it's a bear market, man, I should have gotten in earlier or should have waited. Bear market is a time for building. So if you think about Amazon, where I came from, I spent 5 years at Amazon Web Services. We were born and created and built in a bear market. So these Web2 platforms, let's think about Google. When you go into Google, you have a username and a password and you sign into Google. You do the same thing for Facebook. You do the same thing for Twitter. I guess I should probably now say Instagram because I don't know many people logging into Facebook anymore. But as you do that, for the convenience of logging in, you provide access to your data. And in fact, just this past weekend, my husband and I are in California. We're from Texas. So we're going to a Texas party in California, and they want us to dress like Texans. So my husband and I were chatting about it in the car. Should we get boots? Should we get hats? When we got home, Amazon had already presented me with Stetson hats and Ryder boots and fringe shirts that I should, take advantage of. And why was that? Well, because they have access to what we were even talking about as they listen, and then provided access to a variety of things for us. Now in Web3, that changes. In Web3, digital identity is a part of the fundamentals. Just as fundamental as decentralization is this concept of digital identity, or owning your data and owning your identity. So in Web3, instead of having multiple ways to log in Web3, you can use one digital identity and you can log in across the decentralized web. Now, let me just kind of frame out why that's really important. So I thought this was really interesting. It's some data I came across while I was doing some research. Google and Facebook in a year will make $100 billion just on taking your data and my data and selling that. So they're making money. That's part of their business. But what if that was switched around to where you were the one who decided who got your data, how they got their data, when they got the data, and how much you want to share? Like, do I really want to share that I'm going to a Texas party? Probably not much harm in that, right? But a friend of mine just had a diagnosis for their son, and they wanted to do some research. So they got online, they started Googling to learn about this new illness that their son had just been diagnosed with. Pretty soon they were also getting recommendations on books on this illness. And more importantly and alarming was their insurance company also reached out to them and said, hey, we saw that you were searching on these things. Is there anything we should know about your healthcare coverage? So data can be used for good. Obviously, it can be also used in ways that we don't want it to be used for. So let's take a look at what a digital identity looks like today. So I'm going to share my digital identity. So there's a couple of things you'll notice on this digital identity. First of all, this is sandy.nft. If you can see that right there, that sandy.nft is my digital identity moniker. So I use sandy.nft to sign into a crypto wallet or to purchase something, or when I go to a DeFi app, that's what I use. I don't have to type in a username and a password. That's already linked to my crypto wallet. So that's what I get to use. I also have a pseudonym, which is Pink Mamba. Yeah, you have to ask me. I love pink, as you can see from my shirt, my slides, my hair here on my NFT. And I actually will sometimes enter into a space as Pink Mama, especially into metaverses, especially when I'm teaching students. Instead of using Sandy, sometimes I'll use this when I do my classes or lectures for Carnegie. Next here, you can see I've got 4 different wallets. So my wallets that are connected with my domain are also here as well. I did what we call a humanity check. You don't have to do a humanity check, but I did a humanity check. And what does that mean? That means I got in front of the camera and I compared it to a government issued ID. So it verified that sandy.nft is actually a person. I am not a bot. I am actually human. I'm a person. You don't have to do that. I know it's very debatable in the Web3 community, whether you want to do that or not, but I decided to do that based on some of the things that I do. You can also see here in my digital identity, I've linked in all of my socials as well. So those are verified. Now I can't actually get to the data, but the way I can use this is there are some decentralized social platforms. And so instead of starting over with no influence at all, some of those decentralized platforms, if I choose to share how many followers I have on Twitter, 80, I don't know, 85,000, something like that, they will then allow me to have clout on their system from day one. So unlike, I had a good clout on Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram, then I went to Discord. I was like nobody. I had 0 followers, 0 everything. But in some of the new decentralized, they'll take advantage of that and use and leverage that as well. So now if I look down here, I have badges as well. So this is an early adopter badge. It was an award that was won from Stanford University. We had a little competition. I happened to win. And so they gave me a badge. We see more and more universities doing things like this to give badges for awards. And then you can see I've got a couple of NFT collections in here. I've got my NFT domain. And then we'll talk about in the future too, what else might be in here. But today, this is where we are. Remember, this is the dial-up phase. We're like that pancake on the right, still being worked on and massaged, not that perfect pancake on the left. Now, what is this over here? Well, this over here is now my permission. So as I go and use sandy.nft to log in, I can now decide what that application can see. So for example, maybe I don't want them to know my email. Maybe I just want them to know my name. All I need to know is that I have enough cash to pay for whatever it is. They don't need my email. Maybe they don't need to know that I'm a human. Maybe they do. So I can decide. And also applications, you'll see as you log in, it will say, in order to log into this application, I need to know this. And then you can decide, yes, I want to share that, or no, I'm not logging into that application. So let me give you a good example of Humanity Check. We are working with a retailer right now. And that retailer, typically the way that they market is that they buy data from Google and Facebook to come up with their target list. So they have to pay dollars for that. And then they assume a 30 to 40% fraud rate because they know that I might have 2 Facebook accounts or 2 Instagram accounts or 3 Google emails. So they assume a fraud rate in that as well. Typically what they do, they sell high-end furniture and rugs, that sort of thing. They will give a 20% off coupon then to people who match their criteria, which is they've just purchased a new house or moved into a new location. They'll give a 20% off coupon on some major, sofa or rug, that sort of thing. But right now what they're doing is analyzing if they know that you are a person, and if they know through a DeFi app that you have recently gotten a mortgage and you choose to share that information, they can now give a $1,500 coupon to you. So now the choice is yours, right? If you want to share that you are a human and that you've just done a mortgage, you could get a $15 off coupon, or you could wait for Facebook and Google to sell that data, go through the fraud rate and get a 20% off coupon. So there will be a trade-off. And I think there will be mechanisms for individuals eventually to figure out what is their data worth, right? I don't really know what my data is worth today, but I think in the future, we'll have to figure out what is that data worth? What's the value of it? Okay, so now let's say you have your digital identity. What can you do with it? Well, the easiest one is, because we've integrated with tons of wallets, now instead of typing in your crypto address, which I hope you guys know is a whole series of crazy letters and numbers, I can just type in sandy.nft, and that will be converted automatically to a crypto address, and I'm able to use and leverage that. It's kind of the easiest and first use case, makes everything very simple. But I will tell you for companies, because sometimes the simplest idea is really the best idea. We've had companies come back and tell us that it saved them up to 40% of their support cost, because typically when they do customer support, they're answering questions from people who say, oops, I entered the wrong letter. It shouldn't have been an A, it should have been a B, it shouldn't have been a 4, it should have been a 2 as well. What else can you do with it? Well, that is triggered by login. So I wanted to kind of tell you as well. So the domain alone is valuable. It has value because it allows you to, be able to translate this wallet address. But we are also integrating a login capability with many, many applications. And when you go and then you log into that application, you can also use that domain. So it's kind of a two-set offering that we promote today. So I just want you to know it's not just the domain, the partner or the company also has to integrate in this login capability. So if you look at that login capability, what does that allow you to do? Well, now I can log into a metaverse. I just picked one of my favorites. This is Atlanta Metaverse. They're actually hosting a big hackathon. The CEO is from Ukraine, so they're hosting a hackathon coming up in the underground tunnels of Kyiv. I love their metaverse. It's kind of fun. And so when you come into their metaverse, they'll tell you, hey, here's what I need from you. And then I can decide, do I want to allow them to see that or not? But now I can just use sandy.nft to get into this metaverse. I don't have to have a separate username and password. They're not collecting data on me and selling that data. They're allowing me to use or leverage this as we go along. And what else can I sign into? Well, I could sign into Cook Finance. Now you see here, this is a different kind of perspective too on how they're doing it. More, I would say, decentralized finance. Decentralized finance is DeFi, but they're kind of using more of a Web 2 way to log in, right? So here they allow me to log in with a wallet, or they allow me to log in with Google, or I can just, again, you see this little unstoppable domains there. I can just take my domain and log in that way as well. And then this is Huddle. We're on Zoom today, but Huddle's like the Zoom for Web3. We should try it sometime actually. And they also will allow me to use sandy.nft. I show you these three wildly different examples, right? One is like a Zoom-like product. One is finance, like a serious finance. And one is a cool, fun metaverse. All of those, I can use my digital identity to log into that particular application. That application is not collecting data on me. That is stored in my digital identity. Now, a lot of people will ask me, oh, so are you keeping my data? Does Unstoppable have my data? And the answer is absolutely not. That data is stored on chain. So on the blockchain, you own that data. Unstoppable doesn't own that data. You own your data, and eventually we'll be managing a lot more of that data. And by the way, when something goes on chain, as we talked about earlier, for context, all of that data doesn't have to be publicly viewable. It can still be on chain and be private, which I'm sure you guys learned about, but just so that you know that, oh, okay, so now everybody can see my email. No, they can't. It varies a little bit as well. Okay, so let's then continue on. Why isn't this? Oh, there we go. Okay. I did also want to just share one other thing that I think is quite fascinating too about this is your domain can also be used. A lot of the examples I gave were fun and stuff, but this one I love. So we have partnered with Blue Studios, run by a phenomenal woman. And what we've done together is we have created a family wallet. Now, we were doing a Twitter space together on that family wallet, and I was telling people how every Sunday night we have a huddle around my kitchen table, and we have my parents on Zoom, my sister and brother-in-law on Zoom, my kids in person, my husband and I in person, and we kind of talk about what is crypto, what is Web3, what is the metaverse, because I want my daughters growing up knowing all of this stuff, like from a very early age. And so as we were talking about that on the Twitter space, they were like, oh, wow, you've got a family DAO. It's like, you know what we do? We have a family DAO. So we created a family DAO template, which you can get access to again through that Unstoppable domain. And in that family DAO template, you can create who has permission to help who. It's also a learn to earn. So you could set it up to where your kids earn crypto for doing certain learning tasks as well. And I'll just say one interesting factoid about this. I really love this concept of having all generations be part of this. And it's quite fascinating because we originally thought that most of the permissions would be done from the parents, giving permission to the kids to spend so much. But in reality, what's happening now is the kids are kind of regulating the grandparents, teaching them, oh, mom, you don't want to spend, or oh, grandma, you don't want to spend 10 ETH for that, because 10 ETH is a lot. It's not like $10. So it's really, I think, kind of interesting and kind of cool. How else can you use that digital domain? Well, you can also now use that digital identity on your mobile app. So if you see here, this is that same Sandy.nft. It's on my mobile device, whether that's a watch or a phone. You can see that QR code there. And now it's kind of a fun application, but now I can use that at business conferences. So I don't have to carry a business card around or, say, oh, my Telegram is Sandy Carter, Telegram me. Now they can just use this QR code and they get whatever information I want to share with them, I can share with them as well. And there are endless possibilities to this. In fact, yesterday I was doing a podcast with Fox News, and they said, what's your favorite digital identity application? And I said, I don't know. It hasn't been invented yet. It hasn't, because the possibilities here are endless. So I'll tell you some of the early things that we're working on. So we're working with a university, and we're looking to put your diploma and your certifications inside of your digital identity. Well, why? Well, that obviously is cool. Like if you're applying for a job and they need to know you graduated. I also found out from one school that 40% of people who are in alumni groups on LinkedIn actually didn't go to the college. They're just there for networking, and the college really has no way to know, like, did you change your name? Did you change your address? Who is who? How do you match? Well, imagine if it's on the blockchain. And then I have to tell you, my daughter took a computer animation class at a local community college, and I wanted to get her transcript. So as a good mom, I could send that to university when she goes. Do you know, I called the university and they asked me to fax over my information. Now, first of all, I had to find a fax machine. So think about it. Do you know where a fax machine is? I had no idea. And then they actually mailed me her transcript. So I have a physical document that was there for the transcript as well. So imagine if all that was so much easier. I'll just do one additional one, healthcare. I was at NFT NYC, and in the healthcare space, there was about 100 different startups there, and they were walking me through how they're looking at putting healthcare data on an NFT, and they want to store that in your digital identity. Well, why? Well, I was just in Paris. What if something happened to me? How does the doctor get my information? What if I had it on my digital identity? I just recently moved from one city to another city, and I called to get my records. And do you know, 30% of the people I called would not give it to me. Like, it's my data about me, and they wouldn't give it to me. They would only send it to another healthcare company. And then the last thing these startups told me, I don't know if it's true, but they said that 60% of misdiagnosis come because you don't have all of the information, all the test data and everything, to where if you put it on an NFT and you have it, you could share the entire bit of information. Now, I know there's lots of rules. There's HIPAA requirements. There's how do you manage it? I'm talking future now, like where are we going in the future? I think all these possibilities are pretty interesting as we go into the future. And I have many more too. I just want to make sure I keep to the time that we have here. So where do we need to be? I believe solidly that we need to own our own data. We need to be the ones choosing who to share it with. We need to be the ones that have the power to say who, when, why, how, and how much. That's what digital identity and the Web3 world is all about. And part of this reason is I do believe, especially as I teach different levels of classes, that the self-sovereign identity is inevitable. So I teach this Carnegie Mellon class, which is to, 18 to 21 year olds. They're like sold that you have to own your data. You have to own your identity. And even I was just teaching a class to chief data officers. So these are more experienced people, therefore, a little bit older. And they're now coming to the conclusion that you have to own your data because they're seeing so many breaches and issues with companies owning data, countries owning data as well. So I do believe that this will happen over time. Okay, so what do you do? How can you take your digital identity back? Well, the first thing is I think you should get your digital identity. Go to Unstoppable Domains, create your profile, link the information that you want to link there, use a cool NFT if you have one or buy one, and start playing around with it. Like this is the way that you learn. And Web3, you learn by doing, like you get your hands dirty. I love that you're all here today listening to me, but you're going to learn 1,000 times more by going now and trying what I just talked to you about versus listening to me, to be honest. So my last slide, what do I predict in the future? So I predict that digital identity will become the gateway to the new internet. I predict in the future, you will have to have your digital identity to get in. It will no longer be app by app by app. So that's why I encourage everybody to do this right away. In fact, I was doing this Chief Digital Officer conference, and I think on average, every Chief Digital Officer got 6 domains for their families, for their kids, their brother, their company, etc. I do believe as well that Asia is really far ahead. I believe that there will be 10 million digital identities that will be created in Asia by the end of 2023. We're heading over to Singapore. And the adoption rate in Asia is much higher than we're seeing in other places. So I do believe that there will be a leadership position there. 3, we are already seeing Web 2 companies piloting with this. They want to be able to have either a Web 2 way to sign in or a Web 3 way. You'll see this. I just read an article. Google is now the #1 investor in Web 3 companies for digital identity, in crypto, as well as in the metaverse. #1, outpacing Pantera and Sequoia, Google. That's interesting to me. And then 4, I think that decentralized and government-backed identities will continue to find utility. I still think you might have to have for at least the next, several years, I think you're going to have a physical driver's license, even though that driver's license may also be present in your digital identity as well. I really want to thank you for the time. I'm sorry I couldn't answer questions as we go, but I'm hoping we now have some time to answer questions. I don't know how you want to do that, but let me just say, I hope you have some takeaways from this. I try to make it actionable, and I love to hear your questions. Thank you.
That's super amazing, Sandy. Thank you so much. And I really love this very bold vision of saying, we're moving towards a world in which millions of people will have digital identities, probably billions of people, if we think about the total global population of the world. So yeah, for the students in the course, you can write your questions into the chat. And in addition, we can also give you the microphone, but please write the question first so we also know what to ask. And Sandy, so we had already a few questions about the choice of blockchains, because now we're basically creating identities on blockchains. But how do we know which blockchains will prevail looking forward? Even the entire industry is about a decade, years of lasted. So how do we know that it will be Ethereum, Polygon, Bitcoin, and so on that will prevail going forward?
You're not going to like the answer, but we really don't know for sure. Yeah. I think we know what are the largest building up today. So for example, we bet on Polygon because of its support of the climate. We feel that climate is a major issue, and they essentially have lowered, there's a whole climate paper on them, but they've lowered it down to basically being carbon neutral, which is very important. I know the merge is also the Ethereum merge, if you guys don't know, which is going to come probably sometime in September, is also looking to reduce that as well. So there is no way to know for sure today. If I knew for sure today, I probably could be, a multi-billionaire, because it would be making a prediction. But I do think you can look at signs. And some of the things that I look at are things like, where are the developers going? And if you look right now, most of the developers are going to an Ethereum or a Polygon based chain, an EVM based chain, as they move forward. I don't know the future, but that would be my take today. So maybe make multiple bets. I don't want to give financial advice, but that would be what
No,
I
no,
would.
no, no, no. That makes total sense. Just looking at in Unit Masters, basically what we try to teach the students is to look at things systemically. None of us knows the future. We can look at the science, as you say, and we try to help cluster information in a way that people can go and make their own decisions based on their best understanding of the ecosystem. I really love the idea of this image of the layered cake, because that helps breaking down complexity into chunks that then one can take and then dive deeper as one goes along. Would you mind going back to that slide so that we can maybe use that as a base for a use case, maybe in edtech, as you've already laid out, going through the experience with your own teenage daughters. If we were to look at that, for example, applying this framework, this cake framework into the edtech, how do you see that moving forward? Like on the base layer, the blockchain and trust. That, like, how would that play out so that we can all follow the logic of this framework towards applying it and ending in a world of the future in which DAOs will be there and we can all create these DAOs to uh, collaborate or coordinate the information.
Mhm. So blockchain, I think, is really an interesting area right now that we're really studying and watching. It has today all of the great technology, but it is very expensive. It has had some scalability problems. So again, we're in that early days of blockchain. There are also a lot of things that we need to think about, I think, around will smart contracts continue to grow, or will it be smart assets? So I actually have a bunch of partners now who are building smart assets, and there is an interesting CEO. His talk is smart contracts are dead, long live smart assets. So I'm inviting him in, and he's gonna walk through with my CEO and my engineering team kind of his premise and his assumptions on, is it a smart contract or a smart asset? All of those are dependent upon that blockchain. And for advanced technology, I think we all have to stay on top of many of these things. In fact, one of the things I tell people is, in Web 2, you had to learn like every 6 months, every 9 months, what was new. In Web 3, it's almost like every week there's something new coming out, right? Like this whole smart assets announcement just came out most recently. And this DAO is giving all of that smart asset content away, building their own blockchain to do that, right? Because you have to reorchestrate the blockchain for smart assets versus a smart contract. In Web3 and in DAOs, I think one of the big ad tech that is really driving that is artificial intelligence. So how are we creating learning models? So for example, how do we price our own TLDs? Well, we use algorithms based on artificial intelligence to say Christmas.x is going to be very much in demand. Therefore, we're going to put a high price on it. And if you think about digital identity, I think there will even be more AI embedded in that as we as individuals have to manage that data, right? There's a whole bunch of ad tech there, including the question of, will we all have an appliance in our house that manages our data? I know that seems far-fetched today, but if you think back, my great grandmother would have been shocked to see that there was a refrigerator in every house. Right? That was something that didn't exist many years ago. And now who wouldn't have a refrigerator in their house? So having a data appliance in your home that manages your personal data, people are like, oh, that will never happen. But I think it will. I think there will be something in our homes, an appliance type thing that will manage that data for us, and maybe even with the help of artificial intelligence. And then metaverses. I actually was just with an amazing company yesterday that's extending out AR and VR to, instead of building an avatar, you're bringing you into the metaverse. So it's actually you're actually moving, you're actually in the metaverse versus an avatar. So I think there's tons of ed tech that span this entire cake. In fact, we could do a whole lecture just on the ad tech that's coming, that's being built around these areas as well. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it's really, I just love to have mentors here who, like, can cluster everything into ways that are very, very understandable. It's a very rare skill, in particular when you look at the technology um, industry. And I'm very grateful that you take the time to break break that down, and also pointed us towards the idea of security, because we had questions in the chat from students who basically mentioned that, oh, what if digital identity is not safe? Like, there are concerns, but that's the same as keeping private keys private, right? And because in the corporate world, for example, people have felt the need for having professional services, custodians, developed that keep keys can keep keys for like assets safe on behalf of companies. So we are seeing a lot of different solutions emerging in Web3, and we are still so early in this industry that we still have a lot to see. A lot can grow that is not even in our awareness, probably at this very moment. Maybe we can wrap up the session.
Yeah, I was just going to
Sandy,
add one thing. I was just going to add one
yeah,
thing there real quick, because
yeah,
these are the type, I mean, this is what Web3 is all about too, right?
yeah,
It's about a community coming together, thinking about some of those challenges. And maybe some of your students may come out with a great new appliance or a great new security methodology. That's really what this is all about. So I love how you've got this whole community from all around the world. And I'm learning as much as you guys are from your questions. So thank you for that.
yeah, thank you. So maybe we can wrap up the session with just your outlook on, and I'm just building on a question that came through one of our students, saying, what does it really take to go from today's world where we have this first digital identities that you guys are building, to a world where this digital identity will replace, the current national identities? How far are we away from that world, and what would need to actually happen for that to become a reality?
Yeah. So here's what I think. I think the biggest gap today in what we're doing overall is that user interface. So for this to become a reality, I think we need to make it easy enough so that everybody can go get their digital identity. Today, and I think you guys are going to walk through kind of getting your digital identity at a
Yes.
later session. As you go through that, you'll see you have to connect to a wallet. You have to go from a wallet to an exchange. It's hard. I've done this for retirement communities. I've done this for kids. It's not a way that you can have widespread adoption today because of the user interface, because of the way everything is built with the user experience. It was built by developers, and it feels like it was built by developers, right? And so, in fact, we were doing a session in Paris, and after the session, we all got together in a group, and they said, you know what we need to do, because everybody agrees this is the number one blocker for having widespread adoption, is we need to go and hire a bunch of Apple engineers who know how to do user interface and bring them over to Web 2. Like, we don't want the Web 2 company to do it. We want them to bring them over and get them adopted into Web 3. It was kind of a joke, but it really does make sense. I think that's the next big frontier. And I know it sounds simple, but that is, I think, the next big frontier for having digital identity adopted by all is user interface, user design, making things simple so that you can have, one click master adoption.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sandy, for being with us today. We will indeed have demos for master students to get their own digital identity on Unstoppable Domains. And also, please watch your emails on Tuesday. You will receive an email with further announcements and instructions for how to get your digital domain with Unstoppable Domains. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and looking forward to receiving your assignments and key takeaways and reading the post that you put as a key takeaway from our session today. Thank you, Sandy.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sharon.
And any other questions, you can tweet me on them. I'm happy to help you at Sandy_Carter. You can find me on Instagram, basically any social platform out there. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of what you're doing and training this next generation at Level Up. It's amazing. So all of the students that were out there, thank you. Thank you, organizers, for putting this on as well. Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Have a wonderful Friday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Bye.
Agama, can you just close the session? Bye, Eric.